Welcome into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk to grandfathers, adult grandchildren, and experts in areas of importance to grandfathers. Whether you're a new grandfather, a seasoned pro, or somebody interested in learning about relationships, this is the place for you. So come on in, join us as we learn together, laugh together, and support each other on the Cool Grandpa Podcast. Hi, and welcome into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited for us to have this chance to sit down the last day of the month here in May of 2024 and really be able to have another fantastic conversation. This week, our guest is Adrienne Davis. Now, Adrienne is a health and wellness coach, and she helps adults and children overcome physical and mental health challenges by eating more plants and spending a lot of time outdoors. She and I definitely connect on this idea of being outside as often as you can to help build up those relationships, as well as just build up your own healthy well-being. One of the things that you're really going to enjoy hearing about is her passion for helping people to work on reversing that type 2 diabetes. Before we jump into that conversation, I do want to remind you my children's book, My Grandpa's Grandpa, is on sale at Cool-Grandpa. This is a great time of year to purchase this book, coming up with Father's Day just in a few weeks. If you purchase the book and you would like me to sign it before I ship it out, and shoot me an email, and that'll be great. I'll sign it the way you want, and then we'll get it in the mail to you. The other thing I want to remind you about is enrollment is now starting for Grandparents Week. Grandparents Week is a great celebration of grandparents and everything that we all do for our grandchildren and our adult children and those people in our communities as well. Grandparents Week is a free celebration of being a grandparent. And what's great about this is that there will be multiple presentations that will be given by experts in and around the topic of being a grandparent. Well, that's enough for me. So let's jump into this conversation with Adrienne. Hi, Adrienne. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you back. It's been a few years since you've been on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
What I'd love to do is kind of catch up a little bit from when our last episode was released about 3 years ago and really kind of see where things have been with you. And then we want to get into your business and your passion about helping people with type 2 diabetes. Now, if I remember right, we released our episode on, I think it was January 30th, and then your son Jed was born on the 31st, like the very next day.
Yeah, he was born on December 30th, and so I think the episode came out the next day, and it was just really cool because it's a really cool experience, but I'll share that with you in a little bit.
Sorry, I got the dates all mixed up, But yeah, I thought that was really cool because I do remember sending out the emails and communicating with you as far as like, hey, I'm editing the show. And then you were telling me like, hey, I'm expecting like any moment now. So if the show comes out and I don't help promote it, I'm probably in the hospital. And so I know there's a lot of that communication going on. And I thought it was really cool, how the timing of all that worked. And what I'd love for you to do is talk to us a little bit about not only Jed coming into the world, but then also the memories and some of the legacy your grandfather left with you that you've been able to share and reflect on with Jed.
Yeah. Well, in the first episode, I had mentioned my son, Robbie, and how he was able to have 6 years with my grandpa before he passed away. And, those 6 years were really great that Robbie had with him and got to do things with him. One thing when I found out I was pregnant in 2020, which I must have had pregnancy brain on that episode because I did not even mention that I was pregnant. And after the episode, I'm like, I can't believe I did not mention that I'm pregnant. Like, that's a big deal in my life. But the one thing that was hard for me was because, Robbie had 6 years with my grandpa, and now Jed isn't ever going to get to have that. So he's not going to get to be able to meet the man that really changed my life and set me on an amazing path. And so, it was really kind of a hard time for me. But over especially the past few months, it's really been making me realize how important my grandpa really was in my life. I mean, I already knew that. Obviously, I mentioned a lot of it on the first episode, but like, especially now, Jed is 3. So he just turned 3 December 30th. And he's starting, now that we're able to do a lot more, now that the weather's getting nicer, you know, we're doing things, we're getting outside more. Even back in January, I mean, it was still cold, it was snowy. And like I took Jed on his very first sledding experience. We went up to our local state park. It was just me and him. We took a sled and we found these 2 hills and we literally just went and slid down one and then walked up, you know, the other one and then sled back down that one. And in that moment, I instantly got an image in my head of me and my grandpa when I was little going up to our local park and sledding down the hill when it was all snowy. And it brought tears to my eyes because I'm like, I'm getting to enjoy, I went sledding with Robbie too. And I really loved that. And it's like, now I'm getting to enjoy that again with Jed. And it was all because of my grandpa. And, you know, taking hikes and walks. Like Jed loves to go to our park. We have a state park that's 10 minutes away from our house and then another one that's about 45 minutes. And we visit both of them pretty regularly. And he loves to just run through the woods. I mean, you get him and release him, you know, as soon as he gets out of his car seat, he's out of the car, he's gone. Like he just loves to walk and run through the woods. And I start to think like, it's because of my grandpa that that's even happening, because my grandpa really left a legacy with me. And I don't really know if he even realized what he was doing in that moment. Like I'm not a grandparent yet, but you know, I'm thinking like he might have just been enjoying the moment with me, you know, and just thinking, oh, this is a fun thing. Let's go sledding. Let's go walking, you know, let's go bike riding or whatever. He might not have realized that he was literally paving a way to, you know, to do this later on, to affect generations down the road. It wasn't just about me and him. It was about generations to come. Because now the things that he instilled in me that were important, you know, getting outside, going bike riding, spending time with your grandkids, he instilled that in me. And basically, I was kind of like his kid and his grandkid because my grandparents raised me, as I mentioned before. My mom was a truck driver, still is to this day. She's actually on the road right now. You know, so he raised me. So not only was I his granddaughter, but I was also like his daughter because he was raising me as his own. To him, it was just like, hey, I'm spending time with my daughter / granddaughter, right? But like now, because of him doing that, I'm doing those things with I did them with Robbie, and now I'm doing them again with Jed. And Robbie just turned 20 in January. So he was 6 when my grandpa died. And at 20, like I'm still trying to get him outdoors and promoting that. And now I'm getting to do it again with Jed. So if my grandpa wouldn't have done that with me, if he wouldn't have really instilled in me the importance of being outdoors and really connecting with your loved ones, I might not be that kind of mom today. I might be the mom who is sitting her kids in front of a TV screen or a video game screen all day, or a tablet or an iPad or whatever, and just sitting there doing nothing, like, and just acting like we're just 2 different, you know, we're worlds apart. So I really value that just because he really made a mark on me that now I get to raise my kids to do that. And hopefully they'll do that with their kids and their grandkids.
Yeah, that's such a great legacy. And I think you really bring out an example of what I talk about with other grandfathers, which is we can't really pick the times that are going to be quality times. We just pick times that we share together. And then it's up to the grandchildren or the children to pick out what becomes quality and what really leaves an impact to them. We can try all we want to go, oh, this trip to here, and we're going to do this, and this is going to be a lifelong memory and experience. It might be, but the thing that really will stand out are going to be those simple walks around the duck pond, or a simple bike ride together, or something else to your point, where your grandfather is maybe thinking like, oh, this is an enjoyable time, but this isn't, you know, lifelong quality, lifelong memory time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and you made me think too. And I love my mom. Okay. So if she listens to this, I hope she doesn't get offended. But When I was younger, she used to take me on vacations that were between 1 to 2 weeks long every summer. So like we might go to Six Flags, we might go to, wherever, California, Florida, tons of different places. And we would spend about a week or two there. When I was 2 years old, she took me to Hawaii. Okay, we flew on a plane. I remember the whole thing, and like, out on the beach and all that. Those were like things that she saved up for all throughout the year. And it was like 1 to 2 weeks. It's like, we're going on this vacation. We're going to do this and this and this. We're going to have these experiences. They're going to be awesome. Right. While I did enjoy the time I spent with my mom, the experiences that really stuck with me in my mind wasn't Disney. It wasn't Hawaii. It wasn't Disney World. It was the times that my grandpa had me outside pulling me in his trailer on the back of his lawnmower around the yard. Because it wasn't something, like you mentioned, it wasn't something that was planned and had to save up for. It was just like, hey, I'm mowing the grass. Do you want to ride with me? I'm like, yeah. And so he'd hook up his little trailer in the back of his riding mower, and I would sit in it and go with him doing that. One day we had a windmill in our front yard that was getting the paint was coming off and chipping off. And we just took some paint and we painted the windmill together. Those are the things that I really remember specifically, the things that we did, sledding down the hill in the winter, riding bikes. One day we had a trampoline. One day he got up there and jumped on my trampoline with me. Grandparents, if you have any kind of medical issues, I don't recommend that, just so you know. But he was pretty healthy, and so he was able to do that with me. He did those moments, and those were the moments that I remember because they were an everyday occurrence. It wasn't just like, oh, hey, I'm going to go and do this one thing once a year. It was like every day I'm getting to make memories with my grandparents, but specifically my grandpa. And that's what mattered the most to me. And can't say it mattered most. I did appreciate the stuff with my mom, but I did really enjoy those daily moments of just living life together. And that's really what it's about. It's not about like, let me specifically just come up with this once a year thing. It's live life together on a daily, weekly basis. If you're not seeing your grandkids except once a week or, once a month or whatever, just make those regular deposits in their life and just do the basic things, because those things are what really add up over time.
I love hearing that, because I think sometimes we get caught up on doing the big event, the big thing, having Christmas just right or having this holiday just right. And that's not what we remember. That's not when I'm talking to adult grandkids like you. That's not something that's 30, 40 years down the road. It might be like, oh yeah, we had this one Christmas. It was nice. We had everybody there, but it was the stuff that really lasts are those small moments and the small parts of connection. The making the pizza dough by hand and making a big old mess in the kitchen, but it's you and grandma, it's you and grandpa, whatever that is. That's such a great reminder. And I love how that legacy is you're able to identify some of that with how you are having your relationship and the activities that you do with your sons.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really enjoying that, just being able to go and do the things with my kids now. And then when they have kids, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to be like, I'm going over there to get my grandkids. We're going camping. We're going sledding. Like, let's go, just because I see the value in it.
I do want to pivot a little bit and talk to you. I think something that's new that started since we last talked was that you've started Raven Creek Wellness. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. What was driving you to start this work?
Well, I originally started just because I've always loved helping people. Just really, I see the value in being healthy overall. I went through a health scare in 2016 and had really bad anxiety and panic attacks. And when I was able to get through that, God helped me through it using nature connection. Just getting outdoors more. I remember specifically asking him, like, how do I get these panic attacks to stop? Like, what do I need to do? And he just said, go back to your childhood. And I knew what he meant. As soon as I heard those words in my head, like, I knew what he meant because my grandpa always had me outside. So I'm like, okay. It was just like I knew instinctively. And so I started spending time outdoors. And the more I did, the anxiety got better and the panic attacks got better. And then, over the course of a few years, he led me to plant-based nutrition. And I went from vegetarian to vegan to now whole food plant-based, which is like a step above vegan. And my panic attacks went away and I got healthier and I felt better. And then I ended up, helping my husband reverse type 2 diabetes when we got together, just because of the nutrition and getting him outside, because the nutrition and the piece about getting outside for health, which I'll mention a little bit more in a bit. But using those two things together helped him reverse his type 2. And after that, it was just like God kept telling me, hey, look, I'm helping you with your own health. I'm helping you help your husband. I want you to go help others. And so I just started doing it, and I created a business. It was just kind of a little thing. I started out with helping people lose weight. Then I was like, I really feel called to focus on diabetes, because people with type 2 are overweight. They have high blood pressure. And it really started with my grandma. I watched my grandma die of type 2 diabetes. She got diagnosed when I was 10 years old, and she basically just let it take over her life. To her, it was a death sentence. I had no idea when I was 10 what the heck diabetes even was. I didn't know what it did to a person. All I knew is that my grandma, who wasn't very active, but at least she went and did things with us, all of a sudden, now I'm 10 years old and she's not doing anything but laying in her bed and watching TV. She's only getting up to use the bathroom and to get something to eat, and then she's right back in her bed. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I don't understand. But she ended up doing that, and 21 years she led that life and did not make any changes to her health, didn't change the way she ate, didn't try to be physically active, didn't do anything. She just gave up. And after 21 years, she passed away. So that, and then with getting with my husband, and then he had type 2 and I helped him reverse it. I'm like, okay, that's two people now, one that didn't reverse it and one that did. And then my mom got diagnosed about 4 years ago, and I gave her some pointers about nutrition and being able to be physically active, kind of helping her with, as a truck driver, how do you find time to be active? But at the time, she wasn't really ready to receive it, and that's okay. Everybody has their own time. And so I stepped back and just kind of let her figure things out for herself. And she got to the point where she had to quit her job because her health got so bad that she couldn't work. And she was off work for about a year. And she went and got a new doctor. And the doctor ended up telling her that they could help her get better and reverse her type 2. And when my mom said, sign me up, what do I need to do? The doctor told her the same exact things that I had told her 3 years ago when she was first diagnosed. So thankfully now she's taken the doctor's orders and she's getting better. I think she now just entered pre-diabetic stage. And so she's doing great. And so I just feel like God's like, okay, you need to keep going on this path. This is what I need you to do. I need you to help people and really help them master this, and to where they don't have to live a life of misery anymore.
That sounds great. It's interesting how we joke about it with kids, where moms and dads can tell kids one thing and it goes in one ear, out the other. Then somebody else comes in and tells the child the same exact thing, and then suddenly the child's doing it. And it's interesting that even as adults, we get that way. I know with spouses and with brothers and sisters and different people, it's so interesting that happens. And then, but we know about it, but then it still happens that we have to have that other voice that comes in and tells us about that. So I'm glad that she had that other voice come in at a point where it could still make a difference.
Yeah, me too, because she was actually able just to go back to work earlier this year because her health has gotten so much better and she feels great, and I'm proud of her. And it just makes me feel like, okay, I know that this stuff works because other doctors are even telling my mom this. And so, this works.
Yeah. And walk me through a little bit when somebody comes to you and they get connected and they've either got type 2 diabetes or they're pre-diabetic. How do you start to work with them? And then how does your course and your coaching and your work follow?
Well, so last year I was doing one-on-one coaching. I worked with a few clients, and we worked together for 3 months. And basically I just worked with them every week. We would go over, some steps that they could take as far as like what should they eat for breakfast? What kinds of things can we do for lunches and then dinners, and getting physical activity in there. We really covered a lot of different pieces, but then we also covered nature connection, and I make sure that I let them know, like, try to, if you, to go on a walk is important, but if you can, do it outside, not just be like a mall walker, right? If you can, get outside in nature, because especially with type 2, like being outside around trees, like it's okay if you're outside like around concrete, at least get some fresh air. But specifically when you're around trees, that's what really is going to matter the most, because trees and plants produce this, it's an essential oil, but it's called a phytoncide. And when you're near trees and plants, they produce these phytoncides that are released. And it's basically a way for them to protect themselves against fungi and other stuff. And when you inhale that, it's really healthy. It lowers your blood pressure. It just really helps you. It actually helps grow these natural killer cells in your body, which are like fight off different diseases and illnesses. And it just really helps you feel better. It gives you clarity. You're able to focus better. It helps improve your mood. And it just kind of gives you peace, which is supposed to, because, God is the God of peace and he created nature. So it makes sense that the more time we spend outdoors, the more peace filled we're going to become.
I like that. And, it reminds me of something I've seen some of the headlines. You probably have too, but I think it was it's probably been going on for years and years and years, but I think in Japan, they call it forest bath.
Yep. Forest bathing. They also call it Shinrin Yoku.
Okay.
So yeah, there's different terms. I call it nature therapy, because when I went through my training, they actually called it forest therapy here in the US. But I'm not always in a forest. I'm usually just around maybe like one or two trees, but a whole bunch of plants and flowers. So I kind of just said, okay, let's do nature therapy, because otherwise people are going to be like, well, if it's forest therapy, why aren't we in a forest?
Right. Especially if you're in the Midwest, it's like, there's all this corn around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not too many trees.
Yep.
So is there any particular how much time you need to spend in nature, how much time you need to be hiking? Because I do like that in the sense of a number of people that talk about when you start to get active again, the weight bearing exercise of just even walking, not running on a treadmill, not doing anything, everything you've got to ramp back up. But is there an amount of time that somebody should aim for if they're starting to get back out and walk state park trails or whatnot?
Well, it really depends on a lot of factors, like how healthy you are, what kinds of limitations you have. But overall, just being in nature, not necessarily exercising or anything, about 2 hours a week is really when you see the most benefit. You can really experience, like there was a study that said if you spend at least 2 hours a week in nature, that people who did that, they could lower their blood pressure by up to 10 points. Yeah, so it's really powerful to do that. And breaking it up, I mean, that's like 20 minutes a day, so it's not very much at all. But again, like spending the majority of that time around trees and plants and flowers as much as possible. Obviously, being around concrete buildings is not going to give you the same effect as it is if you go to your state park and walk on a trail.
Sure. And it reminds me a little bit, I think probably because I love doing this when the weather would permit. At one of my old offices, they had a manufactured pond around a bunch of trees that had picnic tables nearby. So when the weather was nice, everybody was outside trying to sit over there and trying to eat lunch and spend 20, 30 minutes outside of the building. And I always remember feeling a bit more refreshed, a little bit more energized going back in. And of course, it all depends on tasks and what you got and big meeting with the boss or whatnot. But it was still nice to be able to sit outside, listen to the water, watch the birds that are coming around, and then being able to have that, 20, 30 minutes outside before you had to go back into work.
Yeah. Yeah. It can really kind of boost your mood. And it's not just about being physically active either. Like you said, just sit. I mean, I like to, and that's part of my nature therapy is I have clients just sit and do cloud gazing. and just look up at the clouds. You can lay down on the grass if you want and just look at the clouds and, spend time sitting next to a tree and just, inhaling the fresh air. Obviously, though, there's a time for the just sitting and resting piece of it, just being in nature rather than doing all the time. But then there's also the, being physically active outside too, because when you are outside, like walking, jogging, whatever, you actually feel better than you do if you're walking inside of a building or in your house. So it's better, overall for your mood and for your physical overall health to just be able to do those things. If you're going to work out, if you can, do it outside. Do yoga outside, do, Zumba, whatever you do, like just do it outside as much as possible, weather permitting, because it just helps overall.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And I love hearing like I said, getting the headlines and some of the articles about the benefits of all this, because I feel like as little kids, we all know this. As fourth graders, love sitting on the side of a hill, looking up at the sky, talking with our buddies about everything and nothing, and just having that time and exploring the root system of a big old tree and looking at pine cones and all that kind of stuff. And then as adults, we kind of put that away, and then it comes back like, no, this is actually very beneficial, not only to your mental health, but also your physical health.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to like in the Bible, it tells you to train up a child in the way they should go. And when they get old, they won't depart from it. And it doesn't mean they're never going to depart. It just means that overall, even if they walk away, if you've trained them up the right way, they're going to come back to that eventually because that's what they know. That's what's instilled in them. Well, I look at nature connection the same way because again, God created nature. So he created this health promoting thing. Like he created those phytoncides in the trees, like to help us heal and lower our blood pressure. He did that for a reason. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some random thing. Like he had a purpose in that because he knew that that was going to help us. My grandpa probably didn't know that, right? But he still got me outside. Maybe he did know it. I don't know. We never talked about it. But he still got me outside and built that foundation. He trained me up. Now, mind you, I don't know if my grandpa was a Christian, and I still struggle with that. But I know that he taught me a lot of important things that I know now as a Christian are very important. So I'm pretty sure, but he raised me outside and taught me these important things, gave me that strong foundation that was going to help me to be able to be healthier overall. And I remember feeling at such peace whenever I was outside. So even as I got older and I started, having jobs where I was sitting at a desk all day, I was inside, I wasn't getting out as much, and I started having anxiety and all that. I walked away from that lifestyle that my grandpa raised me on, but it was still in me. He put that foundation in me. And because of that, when I started having health issues, that was the one thing that I was able to go back to. As soon as God said, go back to your childhood, I already knew. I already knew because it was instilled in me from the very beginning. And then sure enough, when I went back to that foundation, just like when we walk away from God and we come back, we find out that the stuff that all that bitterness, whatever we had, the struggle that we had, it's better. It's easier to deal with because we went back to our firm foundation. And it's the same way when you get outside, and so if grandparents who are listening to this, if you may think that if you're just getting your grandkid outside, maybe it's just time with you guys right now, but what you're doing, you may not realize it, but you are actually laying that firm foundation. You are training up that child in the way they should go, because even if they do depart from it a little while, once they get to a certain point in their life, they're going to come back to it. Hopefully they don't have to go through a scary health issue, but sometimes that's what it takes, sadly. And people realize, hey, I need to go back to that firm foundation.
Sure. And I love that too, because the next thing that I'd love to pivot over to is how you might suggest that grandparents start including nature time with their grandchildren. As you were talking about, we've got screens, we've got all sorts of distractions. We have some really fun and great activities we can go do. But how can grandparents be a little bit more intentional about sharing nature with the grandchildren?
I think just starting to suggest that they like to come with them places. So like for instance, when I was little, my grandparents went camping and they're like, "Hey, let's go camping. Like we're just going to go camping." I didn't really have a choice in the matter, right? It was like, "Hey, we're going to go camping." And kids, I know that kids get so wrapped up in their electronics and sometimes they may throw a fit and they're like, "I don't want to go camping. I don't want to go on that bike ride with you. I don't want to go on a walk with you. I don't want to go hiking. I don't even want to go sit outside. Like the electrical outlets are inside," right? But in that moment, it's like, this is so important, so, so important. In those moments, you really have to like force the issue pretty much because it's so important, it's crucial. Like grandparents, you cannot just shy away from this and just say, "Okay, my grandkid wants to stay inside on their iPad, so I'm just going to walk away." Please don't do that. I'm begging you, please don't do that, because if my grandpa would have done that to me and just let me sit inside and watch TV all day, I don't know where I'd be right now. I don't know what my kids would be doing right now. I don't know how healthy I or they would be. It's very crucial. So, I mean, just invite them out places. And if they say no, just kind of like, look, this is important. Like, let's go do this. Even if it's 5 minutes, right? Take a 5-minute walk in your front yard or backyard or whatever. Just something to get them outside. If you're mowing the yard and you have a riding mower, hook on the trailer and just say, "Hey, come for a ride, sit in the trailer." Even if you have to bring your iPad, whatever, just come sit in the trailer and get outside. But just be intentional. Like you really have to be intentional. And the kids are going to fight. They really are, because so many kids are addicted to screens today. And the more addicted they are, the more they are going to fight you when you try to take it away from them to get them outside. They're going to get angry. They're going to storm off. They're going to yell. Some of them are, they're going to, if they're truly addicted to screens, if they're on them all the time, it's going to be hard. But you've got to be intentional because their health is on the line. And that's maybe you should like think that in your mind, like this is their health that we're talking about. Like this is their health and it's important. And I can't just let their health fall to the wayside because I'm afraid of them getting a little bit angry and yelling.
I love that. One of the things that we're lucky about here is that we've got a little park close to us that goes up to, I don't know, a mountaintop. But folks in the Rockies, this is not a Rockies type of mountaintop. This is a North Georgia mountaintop, right? And they've got a little circular trail that's close to the trailhead that's full of these little fairy houses. So as people can go out there and you've got different youth groups and different youth that along the way, they put these little fairy houses out there. And when our 3-year-old granddaughter's around, she cannot wait to get over there and then go check out every single little fairy house. And I'm not saying grandparents, you have to go out there almost like an Easter egg hunt and plant all these things out there. But if you have some of these around, that's a great way too to sell, "Hey, let's go for a walk." Because to your point, the 3-year-old would rather sit down and watch Peppa Pig. I don't know. It's whatever the pig thing is that all the little kids are into right now. She'd rather do that. But once you get her and like, "Hey, let's go check out the fairy houses," then it's like, okay, we're out the door, we're walking through the woods, and then we're expanding the hike a little bit. We're going further up the trail where there aren't those little fairy houses to explore and check out what's going on.
Yeah. And you can do scavenger hunts, like what you were saying, make these little, and you can print them off too online. They have different kinds of scavenger hunts that you can print and do a nature one and go out and say, "Okay, let's, it's like a little bingo card, right?" And you just like play nature bingo, like, "Hey, did you find a tree? Cross that off." And, and just make it a little fun game for them just to get them outside and getting curious, because then when they start doing that more and they have fun and they see how much excitement it brings, they're going to want to start doing it more. But you have to take the first step to even make it possible.
Absolutely. Another idea that jumped into my head too, that started when I was working with scouts some years ago, was the geocaching. When GPS devices really started becoming more commonplace. is these geocaches, and this is probably for older kids, but you get a set of coordinates and you have to go off into the woods, typically the woods, but I know they do them around towns and all that. But you go out there and you find the little box and you then sign your name to it that you found it. And then you like leave a little treasure behind in that little box for like the next person that comes along. And I know some kids really like that because it's a little bit of a use of technology, but it's still outside and you're still hunting for it, right? Because it's not just sitting right visible. It's behind a rock, it's behind this big tree root, it's whatever, and you have to really get down and be intentional on searching for it.
Yeah. And I'll admit I have never ever been geocaching, but I know like our local state park does it. And that's another thing too. If you live near a state park, they have events going on all the time, like little activities that you can do. And so like our park, at least once a month, they do have a geocaching where you can come and, they'll give you like where you can find stuff. And then there's the scavenger hunts, like come get a little backpack and it's got scavenger hunt stuff in it that you can go look for, and, bring it all back and then you can get a prize or whatever. And then there's just random things that they have, like come look at the wildlife viewing area and we're gonna, show you how to feed the birds or whatever. Like, so that's something you could do too, is just look up and see what activities are going on there and then invite your grandkids to go with you.
I love it because I love being able to balance out that screen time activities versus the non-screen stuff. And I had a handout where it was, hey, don't forget a simple game of playing catch or kicking the soccer ball in the backyard. It means a lot. And to our earlier point, those may end up actually becoming the lifelong memories that they're talking about their grandparents when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s and on. Is, oh, my grandfather would go out, crazy old man in the backyard, shouldn't have been out there, but was kicking the soccer ball with me. Adrienne, I've had you on for a while. Is there anything about Raven Creek Wellness, anything about some of the other coaching and the work that you do with people with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes that you would like to talk about that I haven't asked you?
Not that I can think of. Just really focused on, I want to help people get healthy and live lives as much as possible. Because, I know with my grandpa, like I told you about my grandma, we used to go take a trip every summer to go visit my aunt in Illinois. And when I was 10 years old, those trips stopped because of her health and she didn't do anything to change it. So while me and my grandpa are outside, doing all these fun things, my grandma was laying in bed and we had a strained relationship anyway. It's like, it was just, she couldn't really do much with us. And so I think that's another reason why God led me to type 2 diabetes rather than any other niche, was because he gave me this passion. He gave me a grandpa who loved doing things with me, and he gave me a passion for health and wellness. And it's like, I want to be able to really help people to be healthy so they can spend more time with their kids and their grandkids. And so they can go outside and go hiking and jump on a trampoline. My grandpa was like in his 60s, I think, when he was jumping on my trampoline with me. Okay. So I want to be able to make it to where grandparents at 60 years old are able to go jump on a trampoline with their grandkid, and they're able to go hike and bike ride and, walk on the trail and do all these things that they can't do if they're in sickness and, if they're struggling with type 2 and they're just miserable all the time and they're overweight. Because so many people, that's a big struggle, is just being so overweight and they feel like they have no energy. They're always tired and they can't do anything other than sit and watch their grandkids play. My job is to help them to be able to go and play with their grandkids and not just watch from the sidelines.
That's awesome. And how can people get in contact with you if they're interested in having a consultation or working with you?
Well, you can go to my website, ravencreekwellness.net. And then if you type that in and then hit the /30, the number 30 in for 30 minutes, you can actually set up a free complimentary consultation with me that way. And then you can also send me an email at adrienne@ravencreekwellness.net. And that'll probably be in the show notes. But Adrienne is ADRIENNE at ravencreekwellness.net.
That's awesome. And yes, I will put this into the show notes. And I'll put a link to our previous conversation in there as well, because I still go back when I'm talking with people and share the stories that you shared with me about the time you and your grandpa had together, because that was so touching. You know, I just want people to be able to listen to that, because we do have new listeners. So folks, check that out as well in the show notes. And Adrienne, I really appreciate you being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. And this has been a blast getting to catch up with you.
Thank you. It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed having Adrienne back on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I've put a link to the conversation that we had a few years ago into the show notes. If you haven't listened to that episode, I really suggest you go back and listen to Adrienne talk about the impact and the influence that her grandfather had on her. And it will be a great opportunity too for you to get to know Adrienne a little bit more. I really recommend that you check out ravencreekwellness.net. Be sure to check out everything that Adrienne has to offer. She's got some great ideas as far as being outside, doing as much as you can in nature, and letting some of the anxiety, letting some of the stress go, because there's so many benefits for a walk in a park, maybe a walk through a forest, whatever it is, just being outside, having a good chance to walk on a beach even. I hope you found this conversation helpful. I know Adrienne and I really enjoyed having you join us for this conversation. And until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.